towns that I savor, like my hometown that I favor, that old place down the long road that I'm traveling to. There's the jokes at the barber, told by Cleve from the hardware, about the stories that always make the news. Our town, wherever I may roam, I'll always have a place that I call home. Our town, it's very plain to see, there'll always be a part of you in me.
The energy of Ontario's Mississippi River was the lure to settlers of Ramsey Township. On its 100-mile course leading to the Ottawa River, the Mississippi drops over 60 feet at the Grand Falls. Here was to be the cradle of a new settlement.
Hello, I'm Barry Penhale. On this occasion, I have been delving into the history of the town of Almonte in Lanark County. A delightful community, Almonte has great natural beauty, as well as a rich heritage dating back to the arrival of Scottish settlers during the early 1800s. One of the most distinguished of the town's native sons was Dr. Robert Tate Mackenzie, physician and world-renowned sculptor. His works represent an important part of Almonte's heritage.
Following the War of 1812, an immigration scheme was put into action to settle the great wilderness north and west of the Rideau River in present-day eastern Ontario. Highland Scots soon joined United Empire Loyalists in this, the county of Lanark. The land is part of the Precambrian Shield, the oldest rock formation in the world, making few parts of the region fit for agriculture. Finding only 8% of it arable, the main harvest was more likely to be stones. The message sent back home to Scotland was bring sheep. Some tracts of land did prove to be quite productive, as exemplified in the thriving farms that nestle in the Mississippi watershed today. The river, whose name has its origins in the Ojibwe language, winds its way through the region, and at intervals, waterfalls are created as it drops over ridges of limestone. It was this water power that attracted men like Daniel Shipman to this site. Shipman arrived here in 1821 and established a grist mill, followed by a sawmill, distillery, and a foundry. James Wiley commenced a lumber enterprise, and the landscape soon witnessed a transformation. It would be with the combination of water power and fleece, however, that the tiny settlement would make its name. The opening of the first woolen mill in 1850, together with railway transportation, brought prosperity. Textile manufacturing became the town's lifeblood. Boasting numerous woolen mills in operation during this period, the town positioned itself as the center of Canadian woolen manufacturing. The Rosamond family was to operate the largest of these mills and employ the majority of the workforce. Using the longer fibers of imported fleece, the Rosamond mills produced tweeds and worsteds that carried the name of Almonte into international markets. The construction of elaborate mansions personified the wealth of mill owners and management. The rough-and-tumble village was no more, for here was a prosperous mill town. Mechanization in the industrial era can be much compared to computer technology in contemporary society. Mill operations of the Rosamond era were state-of-the-art in their day. Jim Byrne and Wilmer Illingsworth spent much of their careers in the woolen industry. Sharing the experiences of individuals such as these creates the opportunity to better understand the workplace of former years.
This is the Rosamond Woolen Company, called Number One, yes. And it's been operating for a good many years. I started in 1924, and it run a long time, I guess, before that. Well, it's meant for the first 24 years of my life I spent working here. When I first started, I was a banker, what they called a banker. We worked, that was a warper's helper. We made the patterns in a frame and drew the ends all in through what they called a hack, filled with holes, 288 holes. Anyway, when we got that finished, the warper the pattern was made for the warper, and he put it on a reel, and it was sent to the drawing-in department before it went to the weave room. Now, the weave room put in the pattern the opposite way to what we did. We put a running pattern in. The weave room put the other run the filling, the opposite way, and could make plaids, checks, anything at all. Just as many women as there was men.
Yes, there was. And in those days in looms, it was one person to a loom.
60 weavers, 60 looms.
60 weavers, see. Today, of course, they're automatics, and there's maybe...
One looks after 5.
5 or 6 looms, yes.
Right.
Winding, weaving, mending.
Dirty darners and clean darners in the finishing room.
You see, a darner was a woman that, when the weaving, the filling was across, and the warp was lengthwise. Well, the darners put the threads that were out after it was woven and brought to them.
There were 7 mills, yes. The Campbell's mill had a whistle. Thoburn's behind the town hall had a bell. And Penman's, where the post office is now, had a whistle. Number 2 mill beside the shoddy mill had a whistle. Had a bell. Then the shoddy mill and the old red had a whistle. Rosamond's had a bell. And between there, the town clock striking 12 and the Catholic Church ringing the Angelus at 12 o'clock with all them whistles and bells ringing, it was like Christmas Eve practically.
Already a town made famous by its textile manufacturing, Almonte and the surrounding Ramsey Township lay claim to an impressive list of native sons and daughters who have gained recognition worldwide. To name only a few, John L. Sullivan, marathon runner; Adelaide Margaret Teskey, author of half a dozen novels; Sir Edward Peacock, who rose to become governor of the Bank of England; William Nielsen, founder of Nielsen Chocolate and Ice Cream; Dr. James McIntosh Bell, famous Arctic explorer; and James Naismith, who invented the game of basketball by refining a boyhood pastime he called Duck on a Rock. I was directed along Mill Street to the Mississippi Valley Textile Museum Visitors Center. Here I spoke with Diane Duncan, coordinator, about the ties of the textile industry and the people of this town.
Almonte is known, or was known, as the Little Manchester of Canada. And the reason goes back to the period when the town itself had the largest production capacity of all the towns and centers in Canada. If it weren't for the entrepreneurship exhibited by these early men, this area would not have developed industrially. On the other hand, they did take a lot from the community as well. They gave in terms of jobs, in terms of services. They had a very paternalistic attitude towards the workers and the community. But at the same time, they became very wealthy men from their enterprises, which were located here. The majority of old-time families in town can relate a number of names of individuals who had some tie to the mill, many of them for entire lifetimes. I have found Almonte a fantastic place to live. It's my adopted community. I came in from another part of Lanark County, but I find that it's a very warm community. There's a lot of activity going on, and we're in a very fortunate location, being within 30 miles of the city of Ottawa. We have the best of the rural way of life with the convenience of being close to a major urban center as well. It's a great place to live.
Almonte is unique to many communities across the country, possessing a landmark such as this. The Volunteer, gracing the portico of the town hall, not only pays tribute to those whose lives were taken in the war, but is an ever-present reminder of its most famous of native sons, Dr. Robert Tate Mackenzie. Much has been written about this remarkable man who grew up in Ramsey Township and, as a boy, played along the riverbank. While attending McGill University, Tate Mackenzie developed his lifelong interest in physical education, and coupled with his formal training in medicine, he began to sculpt to improve his understanding and interpretation of the human form. He went on to head the first fully accredited Department of Physical Education in North America at the University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia, but his roots brought him back to Almonte. He and his wife, Ethel, musician and poet, made their summer home here at the mill of Kintail.
The year was 1937. I was 16 years of age. My father had studied anatomy at McGill under Dr. Robert Tate Mackenzie. And when Tate Mackenzie stopped at the house one day beside the Anglican church, he asked my father if there were anybody in the family, one of the boys, who might be able to drive him various places in his automobile and perhaps assist in keeping the grass cut and the weeds trimmed at the mill of Kintail. I was elected.
John Dunn shared with me his youthful impression of the Mackenzies.
When he and Mrs. Mackenzie were in residence at the mill of Kintail, which was during the season from the 24th of May until Labor Day, they had many visitors from New York, from Boston, from Philadelphia, Montreal, from Ottawa. He and his wife would sit on the little balcony at the back of the living quarters overlooking the falls of the river. And they would sit there with their morning tea talking because the surroundings of the mill encouraged solitude and quiet for any person who wanted to study. And Tate McKenzie was never free of some thought that he was studying. So even tea time was just a momentary relaxation in the business of work. I think that Tate McKenzie was seized with the notion that time was precious. He disliked seeing time wasted. He could not stand it in any person, particularly himself. Every moment to him was precious. I think I could describe him best as a man who had a marvelously inquiring mind. Nothing that was ordinary ever escaped him. He looked for the extraordinary in everything. I suppose, like many people, Tate McKenzie was insufficiently known by people in this community while he was living here in the summers of those years that he spent at the mill of Kintail. But I suppose this is an element of growth, too, that as the years accumulate, we develop a greater and greater appreciation for the heritage that other Canadians have left to us.
Mackenzie, foremost in his field, has indeed left a legacy shared across many borders. In the mid-1800s, the town, in search of a name, adopted Almonte after a Mexican general. Almonte became the Almonte of today. The name of the town was also recorded in the journals of aviation history, when on August 29, 1879, Nellie Thurston ascended high over the church spires in the balloon Lorne to become the first female aeronaut in Canada. To me, one of the most interesting features of Almonte are the buildings. This aspect of the community is one in which individuals such as Jean McPherson focus much attention.
I live in an old stone schoolhouse, which is a designated building. It's designated under the Ontario Heritage Act. And because I lived in such a structure, I became interested in the larger scope of architecture in Almonte and the surrounding Ramsey Township area. We feel that buildings are important both architecturally and historically, and the way that we try to judge them is based on, for example, has an important personage lived in this home or have important events related to the development of the community taken place here. But we're also interested in buildings simply because of their architectural features as representing certain styles of architecture. In Almonte, for example, there's a style that's very characteristic to the town, which is called the Almonte style, and consists of the stone that's used in many of our buildings being a lighter colored stone, which came from Beckwith Township, and then the coins or cornerstones of the buildings being a darker stone. And this gives a very nice effect and is locally called the Almonte style. Local architecture as being such a visible clue to our past. And I really enjoy trying to find out about buildings and why they were built in a certain way. So I'm learning that way, collecting historical information, and then, of course, restoring is a long-term project, and it's something you really learn by doing.
Stan Morton is another of the citizens of Almonte to whom the experiences of the early textile industry will not be forgotten.
Summertime, when the windows were open, you could hear the looms clacking in the Thoburn building. And then when you walk down the street farther, the Penman plant was going. They'd have the windows open, and you could smell the sulfur smell coming out of the, I don't know what department it would be. I guess it would be washing and where they used to wash the material, you know. We called it fulling in the woolen business. I don't know what they called it in the knitting mills. But they made underwear and stuff like that, and Penmans. You know, they were famous for that. But as you walk down the street, you could hear these. You could hear the spinning frames running, the spinning frames and the spinning mules, and all the various things, knitting machines that they had there. And then at specified periods in the day, you'd hear the whistle. They would notify them when it was time to work, time to start work, and the whistle would blow when it was time to quit.
One cannot spend time here without reflecting on the important contribution such towns have made to the industrial and cultural legacy of Canada.
Shipman, the town's founder. Naismith, inventor of basketball. Wiley, merchant and contractor. Rosamond, miller and manufacturer. These are some of the important names associated with Almonte's past.
It is essential that builders of our society such as these be chronicled so that we might better understand and face the challenges of tomorrow.
I'll see the folks up on Main Street who will always take the time for a story over coffee at the old Five and Dime. The flag on our town hall through the years has flown free, a tribute to our hometown's history. Have a place that I call home. Our town, it's very plain to see. There'll always be a part of you in me. There'll always be a part of you in me. There'll always be a part of you.